Hi, welcome back and thank you for joining us for today's episode, which is all about tofu. And I know you're probably thinking that tofu sounds really unappealing and you want nothing to do with it. I personally love tofu. It can do so many different things and you can incorporate it into so many meals, and it's a really easy way to get protein. So today I'm going to show you a handful of ways that you can use tofu so you can be a tofu master. For this first recipe, we'll be making key lime cheesecake with silken tofu. Make sure you get the one that says silken on the package because it's much softer than regular tofu. And this recipe we found on One Green Planet. This one is packed in a lot of water and is very squishy. First, we'll start by making the crust. We're going to put 20 to 25 vegan graham crackers in a food processor. I couldn't find regular graham crackers, so I found these gluten-free crackers that I'm using instead. I'm just going to pulse them until there are no chunks left. Then I'm going to add 1/3 cup of brown sugar and a teaspoon of cinnamon. Then I'm going to mix it again so it's well incorporated. Then I'm going to add 6 tablespoons of softened butter, vegan butter of course. Once that's mixed in, I'm going to press it into the bottom of a springform pan. Then I'm going to bake just the crust for 10 minutes at 375. While that's baking, we'll make the filling. Using 2 tubs of vegan cream cheese, we're using the brand Tofutti. We're going to be using 2 packages of silken tofu, but it's a tight fit inside my food processor, so I'm going to add all the other ingredients before I add the second package of silken tofu. 1/2 cup of agave, 4 teaspoons of vanilla extract, the zest of 2 limes, 1/2 cup of lime juice, and I'm adding some spirulina for color. I was also supposed to add a teaspoon of cornstarch, but I forgot to do that part. You should add that. So I'm blending it up so I can make room for the second block of silken tofu. Then I'm just going to mix that in until it's smooth. Now I can pour the filling into the semi-baked crust. It didn't come out as green as I had hoped. You can always add food coloring or try more spirulina. So I'm going to pop this into the oven at 375 for 1 hour. And it got late, so once it came out of the oven, I let it cool completely and then put it in the fridge overnight. Now I can take it out of my springform pan. I should also note that the butter started leaking out the bottom of the springform pan, so it's a good idea to put it on a cookie sheet or cover the bottom with tin foil so it doesn't spill in your oven. Now I'm just topping it with some toasted coconut, some rice whip, which is made from rice milk. And I wish it was a little more green, but you can always add a little more spirulina or food coloring if you like it. Still tasted like lime. Top with a little slice of lime, and there you have it, cheesecake made with tofu. For this next recipe, we'll be making zucchini lasagna found on the blog Minimalist Baker. This one is much firmer than the silken tofu we used previously. So for this recipe, we're going to press the tofu, which means we're going to squeeze some of the water out of it. This will give it an even firmer feeling and it will help it absorb the flavors better. So we're just going to wrap it in a couple paper towels and then use some kitchen towels to wrap it more to absorb the water that we press out. And we'll top it with some heavy books and let it sit for about 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, we can unwrap it, and it has definitely lost a lot of its water. These towels are very wet. Now we can make our tofu ricotta by putting our extra firm tofu into the food processor, 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast, 2 teaspoons of dried oregano, a teaspoon of sea salt and a pinch of black pepper, 1 medium lemon juiced, which is about 2 tablespoons, and 1/2 cup of fresh basil. This part is optional, but I found some roasted garlic parmesan that is vegan made by Kelly's Croutons. If you have non-dairy parmesan, you can add a 1/4 cup of it here. Then blend it until there are no big chunks. You can add a little bit of water if it's too thick. I'd recommend not using more than about a tablespoon. Just mix that in again. And here we have our tofu ricotta cheese. So to assemble the lasagna, I'm just going to pour some tomato sauce into the bottom of my baking dish. And then line the dish with thinly sliced zucchini. I used a little kitchen tool that looked like a peeler to get my strips really thin. Then I'm going to keep layering sauce, zucchini, cheese, sauce, zucchini, cheese until I run out. And the last layer I have here is zucchini and sauce. I covered mine when I baked it, which was a bad idea because that prevented a lot of the liquid from evaporating, so I would suggest baking it uncovered. You're going to put it in the oven for 400 degrees for about 40 minutes. And here we have our zucchini lasagna. This is so easy to make, it's really filling, and it's so delicious. I make this about once a week. I usually serve it with a side salad and some bread. For this next recipe, we'll be making a simple tofu scramble from the blog Hot for Food. For this recipe, I'm using a high protein tofu, which is way firmer than even the extra firm tofu. There's very little water in its package, and it is rock solid. Okay, maybe not rock solid, but it's pretty firm. You can also use the extra firm tofu that we use for the zucchini lasagna, which is what I normally use. So I'm just going to add some coconut oil to a pan, 2 minced shallots, 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast. This brand is Bragg's. I'm going to add half a teaspoon of paprika and half a teaspoon of turmeric. Then I'm going to crush 2 garlic cloves into the pan. Then I'm going to break up the tofu and crumble it into the pan with the spices. This tofu is really thick, so you have to do a little extra work to crumble it. But again, you can also use just the regular extra firm tofu. This calls for a 1/4 cup of non-dairy milk. I'm using unsweetened original flavor almond milk. Make sure you are not using vanilla or sweetened. I'm just going to break up some of the chunks and then add in some diced tomatoes and some chopped kale. Now I'm just going to stir this up until the kale wilts and add a few pinches of salt and pepper. And now you're all set, serving with some corn tortillas and some hot sauce. I eat this for breakfast, but I also have had it for lunch and dinner, and it makes really good leftovers. For this next recipe, we'll be using, again, the extra firm tofu. We're going to bake it and marinate it and serve it with some rice and veggies. So first we're going to dump out all that water. Then we're going to go ahead and press this one as well. So we're going to wrap it in a couple paper towels and some kitchen towels. Pressing this tofu will really help it absorb the marinade, and leave it for about 10 minutes. And while that's pressing, we can go ahead and make the rice in our rice cooker. I'm adding 1 cup of rinsed rice and 2 cups of water because I'm making brown rice. It is double the water. Then just push my button down and it will pop up and let me know when it's done. For the marinade, I'll need amino acids. I'm not really measuring much. I just know I'll need enough to cover my tofu. So I put about a 1/4 to a 1/3 cup of amino acids, some sesame oil, some maple syrup, and we're making a peanut sauce, so we'll add in some peanut butter. So I'm adding in about a 1/4 cup of peanut butter. Then I'll crush in a couple of cloves of garlic, or 1 really big clove of garlic. This garlic smasher is a really handy tool. Then I'll use this grating tool to grate in about 1.5 inches of ginger. Fresh ginger is really good to have in the house, but if you don't have that, you can always use powdered ginger. Now we'll get our tofu, make sure the water is squeezed out of the sides. Now I'm going to chop it into cubes. You can really chop your tofu into any shapes or sizes you like. I like bite-sized cubes. Then turn it and cut again so it's in a grid. Then the blocks are still a little thick, so I'm going to go ahead and chop them in half. And if they're still a little big, you can always cut those in half as well. I'm just going to make sure these are fully coated in my peanut sauce, and I'm going to leave it for about 10 minutes. You can leave it longer, but I'm really hungry. Spread them out on a baking sheet so they're not touching. Now I'm going to bake them in the oven at 400 degrees for about 25 to 30 minutes, and I'm going to save this sauce in case I want to use it later. Now they are all baked up, and delicious. So I'm going to serve this with some brown rice and some vegetables topped with sesame seeds and cilantro. Okay, that's it for tofu. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope you have found a lot of really useful ways to incorporate tofu into your diet. It's a really easy way to get protein, and it can take on so many shapes and flavors, and now you have a few ideas. So please experiment with all different kinds of tofu and let us know how it's going for you. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.